guys, welcome back to Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people. Once again, we are joined by another fancy, wonderful naked person by the name of Randi. Randi, say hello.
Hey guys.
Hey. I'm sorry, it's pretty early morning for you. Well, I kind of slept in this morning too, so you're not alone.
Such a nice way to wake up, though.
Yeah, well, it's raining today, and honestly, whenever it's raining, I just sleep in as much as I can. No sun shining in my face, but thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the reason I invited you, Randi is one of the few dancers on the opening lineup for the number 5 Orange, which took place last week. I guess by the time I air this, last week. So I really wanted to stay current and also just see how the strip clubs are going to be operating during the time of COVID and, what the shutdown, what that meant to you as a dancer, and also what it means later on moving forward in terms of stripping. But we'll get all through that later. Randi, let's move the focus back on you because I don't know much about you except for I interviewed Bianca from Behind Closed Doors and she sent me your photo to use as one of the photos. I'm like, who's this pretty girl? I'm like, I have to interview her one day. And then now came the opportunity for me to do so. So please tell the world who you are, what you do in your own terms, define yourself, go crazy.
It's always such a hard question when someone asks you to explain who you are, I guess. But hi, I'm Bianca. I'm also known as Randi on Instagram. I'm originally from Calgary and I moved here a year ago. I've been dancing at the 5 for a year. I'm a student. I want to go into health sciences and probably medical school someday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm really not that interesting. I've spent most of my quarantine playing Animal Crossing and staying at home with my cat. So
Animal Crossing is the thing right now.
Oh my God, it's so addictive.
I have not jumped on the bandwagon yet. I cannot because I know all of my time will just go to that and this podcast will be over. So
that's the end of everything.
Pretty
it's
much.
Only Animal Crossing now.
So, okay, let's go roll things back a bit. So you said we've only been here for a year from Calgary? Yeah. Okay, very cool. Were you dancing in Calgary as well, or is the stripper scene pretty new to you, or what's your history with that?
I danced in Calgary for a year. In Calgary, we have 3 clubs that we mainly work at before before Blondies kind of came into the scene. So I was working at the 3 clubs before them that were owned by FM. It was an amazing experience. It honestly doesn't compare to Vancouver stripping. There's a huge contrast between the two.
Right.
Alberta is very especially in those clubs, not in the independent clubs.
Right.
It's more of a kumbaya kind of approach where you're sisters with everyone and everyone's your friend, and it honestly felt slightly easier than it does in Vancouver. As soon as I came out here, it's kind of like a culture shock.
Wow.
It's no contact in Alberta.
Right.
You can barely talk to your clients, and in Vancouver, it's full contact at the 5, which I had to kind of experience and have a little bit of a culture shock. And then the concept of girls will go out after to a club with their clients and hang out with them, and that wasn't allowed in Alberta. So it's a whole different culture here. And also strippers are held on not really a pedestal, but they're more respected in Vancouver than they are in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
In Alberta, when I'd share, oh, I'm a stripper, people would kind of look at me sideways. But here in Vancouver, I'm like, oh, I'm a stripper, and everyone gets excited. People are like, oh my God, what club do you work at? That's amazing. And they're so interested to know about me. So it's a really cool difference. I'm really happy to be in Vancouver.
That's awesome. I'm sure Vancouver is very, very happy to have you as well.
Yay.
Yeah. So interesting that you mentioned the contrast between Alberta strip clubs and Alberta strip culture versus Vancouver strip culture, because we actually had another girl from Calgary that came on too, who's a friend of mine, Rosie. I'm not sure if you knew her.
I do. I love her.
Yeah, I love her too. I worked
with her.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, if you worked with those clubs, you must have worked with Rosie. She was on the podcast when she was in town dancing at the Five a couple months ago. And she mentioned the same thing too, which I thought was a really interesting observation too, just in terms of the clubs that she worked at. She said it was like really, really chill and really casual. And like the 3 clubs there owned by FM, not included, not Blondies, but they had like very distinctive kind of themes. Maybe not themes, but like each club had its own kind of vibe to it, which is kind of cool too. And yeah, it's just a different kind of contrast, as you said earlier. Did you want to go into like you mentioned culture shock when you came to Vancouver? Did you want to speak a little bit about that as well? Or maybe elaborate more on that topic?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the overall openness of BCers and Vancouver folk that really define my kind of culture shock.
Right.
I find that people in Vancouver are a lot more open, a lot more liberal, if you will, and more interested in getting to know you. And I never kind of associate the job with the person.
Right.
Whereas in Alberta, I was finding that, like, if I told someone I was a stripper, they'd assume, like, it's exactly like the movies.
Yeah.
And, like, almost that I was below them. So it was kind of an interesting change as far as, like, getting to know Vancouver people and kind of losing my perspective on what people were like in Alberta.
Right.
And ultimately what my job meant.
Okay.
So an example of that is like I said before, when I would go out, I went out club hopping downtown Vancouver my first week that I was ever here, and people were excited to get to know me. I always kind of hid the fact I was a stripper when I was in Alberta.
Right.
I would say, "Oh, I'm a bartender at one of the clubs," or "Oh, I'm a server," instead of saying, "Oh, yeah, like I'm a stripper. I'm proud of it." But
totally.
I let it slip while I was bar hopping. People were like, "Oh my God, do you know this girl? Do you know this girl? Like, what club are you going to work at when you're here? Oh my God, I love that club." Like, especially working at the Five, where it has such a good ambiance and everyone knows about it. And it's like famous globally. Everyone knows that club. And people come from different countries to hang out at the Five. And it's such a weird contrasting experience. I think I'm just so proud to be part of such a good club. I think. Yeah,
totally. And I'm so glad to start interviewing a lot of more girls at number 5 because it's pretty penthouse heavy on this podcast, obviously because my my club was penthouse. I've danced at number 5 though once, and I was like, book me again, god damn it. But it's pretty fun, as you said. It's got a great reputation. It's super fun. It's globally known across the world. And so many like different celebrities have danced there too, and it's just a fun vibe. Like if I were to choose a club to go to in downtown Vancouver for like a fun Friday night out, it'd always be the 5. So
yeah,
good choice on working over there. Like how did you know you wanted to dance there, or did you visit a couple different clubs before, or maybe you knew people here? Like how did you get associated with the 5?
So I was confused on where to work because I had no idea about any strip clubs in Vancouver.
Right.
There was a girl that I worked with while I was in Alberta. Her name was Berlin, and she told me that if she had to choose one club to work at for the rest of her life, it would be the 5.
Oh, wow. Really? That's a big statement.
Yeah. So I followed the 5 on Instagram, and immediately the GM started messaging me constantly and said, well, if you move out here, like if you're sure about it, then you have a job.
Yay.
And I was like, okay, cool. Then it took me a little long to get out of Alberta just because stuff kept coming up. And that's what happens when you're moving province to province. But
right.
It finally happened. I finally made it to Vancouver. And I ended up starting doing stage in August, I think. But I was VIPing in July.
Okay.
I remember that. So it's almost my 1-year anniversary of working at the 5.
Yay! Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's awesome. Wow, I can't believe you've only been here like a year. Did you know you always wanted to move to Vancouver, or was it just something that you wanted to do at this point of your life, or school had anything to do with it, or what's your story there?
So I came to Vancouver almost every summer when I was a young teenager.
Okay.
And then when I turned 18, I was in between 18 and 19, I think. It was right before my 19th birthday. I came out here with a friend and we just experienced Vancouver. We went out, we went to Earl's and like we drank, went by the ocean.
Nice.
We drank illegally.
As we all did.
I fell in love with the city and I knew from that moment that I couldn't live anywhere else. And it took me a little long to move out here just because I was going to school in Calgary at the time and I didn't really have the resources to move out here.
Right.
So as soon as I had the opportunity, my partner had a job offering in Vancouver and I hopped on it immediately. I was like, yep, we're going. He's like, you don't even, weren't even dating that long at the time when we started talking about it. And I was like, no, I'm in. Wherever we're going, we're going.
That's awesome. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
That was quick. That's amazing.
It was so easy for me to agree to this.
You're like, I am down. This is happening, whether you like it or not, and let's do it.
It was awful for my parents to let me go, but you have to let your kid leave eventually. And I'm the youngest, so it's kind of, because it's hard for them to distance themselves from me.
Of course. Well, they have to leave the nest. And, like, I agree with you, too. Like, when I moved out, and I'm the youngest in my family, too, all of a sudden I just started hearing from my parents again. They're like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, well, what do you want? Am I in trouble? And they're like, no, we just want to talk with you. We miss you.
We just want to hang out.
Yeah. That's just how it goes. And luckily, I mean, like, Alberta's just next door, so you're not too far away. So
yeah.
So it's very easy that way. And what about school, too? Are you going to be going to school here, too? Or are you going to be going to school online? Or what's happening with that? You said you want to work in health?
I'm doing online for now.
Okay. Well, yes, it's COVID time, so.
Yeah. I think I got so bored in isolation that I was like, screw it. I'm going to start paying tuition and going to school because I might as well use my time for something.
Good for you. I was going to ask because...
So...
Oh, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it came out of boredom, and I applied to Queen's.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, I got in.
Yay.
And it was awesome.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And you mentioned you wanted to work or do some kind of future work with health.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to do that?
So I don't like blood, but I still want to go to med school. I hate hearing about people's ailments, but again, I still want to go to med school. So I found out that you can do public health.
Mm-hmm.
So doing what they're doing on the news right now, where they talk about immunization and educating people and talking about viruses and how to protect yourself, that was really interesting to me. And I think it's a sign of the times.
Definitely a sign of the times for sure.
And that's something to hop on.
Yeah, and it's really admirable too. Well, one, you want to take care of yourself, but two, it's so much more powerful for you to be able to take care of people.
Mm-hmm.
So what aspect do you want? You said you mentioned something to do with public health.
Yeah, mainly. Honestly, probably the education aspect of it, or being able to research for the rest of my days, because I'm a sucker for writing essays, and if I can do that for the rest of my life, then I'm down for it.
Well, yeah, med school's a long journey, so it sounds like you'll be in the right kind of field for that. So best of luck on that.
I'm excited.
And of course, with like COVID right now, obviously with this pandemic, there's going to be tons of research. I mean, that's just only one strain of public health, but there's going to be lots and lots of research and positions open in terms of that. So best of luck to you. It's so exciting.
Thanks.
But speaking of which, so this is a COVID mini-series, so I just wanted to bring up how COVID has affected all of us. Obviously, every week for the past 4 or 5 weeks now, I've done this COVID series. Been talking about different aspects of COVID in terms of what people are doing. We're talking about our street sex workers. We're talking about, moving all of our work online. And now, which is kind of exciting, the strip clubs are beginning to reopen. So at the time of this podcast, at least at the time of recording, I know that the number 5 is open, which is where you dance. Also, I believe the Caddy Shack is open in Vancouver, and I think there might be another club opening soon, but that's all to my knowledge, at least. But I wanted to remain very current on this podcast, so I really wanted to kind of catch someone that is working at the Five, which is why I wanted to ask you how all of that has been going. So, lots of questions here and a lot of speculation and observation in terms of past audience members and also dancers and people that want to be booked again at the club. So, let's go into this topic. It's a big one. So, let's maybe start with pre-COVID. You're working at the Five. Things are going well. Were you booked that week when the Five closed down?
Coincidentally, I was the last full week at the Five
Oh, no
before
way.
they closed.
Oh, wow.
There was another round of girls that danced on stage for, I think it was 3 days, and then we had to close our doors. But yeah, I was the last full week, and then I was the first full week coming back.
Yay! That's so awesome. But that's crazy though. Like, obviously, when COVID was going on, I mean, it's still going on, although it seems to be canceled right now. That's another topic for another time. Black Lives Matter. But when this is all unfolding, especially in the first couple of weeks of March, were you worried about the club? Was this like a thought in your mind at all? What kind of thoughts were running through your head at this time, if you were thinking about it? I know I wasn't thinking about it, so.
My last week of work, I don't even know how to explain it. I knew that it was going to end up closing. I knew it was going to happen. I had a feeling.
Okay.
Going into it, I was apprehensive. I have really bad respiratory issues, which is why I was scrambling for my inhaler earlier.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was scared for my health, and I was scared for the health of my family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very complicated decision to go to work that week, just because things started boiling up. We weren't sure of the exact numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Cases were going up steadily, and I was watching the news every day, which probably didn't help. My mindset changed, because usually when you're working a regular week at work, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to go buy a Gucci bag. I'm going to go spend my money. But that changed completely that week. Everyone I was working with focused on saving their money, because we don't know what could happen.
Yeah.
And that was honestly the best mode of action, because the money that we made that week, a lot of us lived off of for the 2 months we were out of work.
Right.
So it was just, the ambiance in the dancer room was depressing and very end of the world vibey. And
Right.
It was empty for the entire week.
In terms of clients?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
It was definitely lower than usual, and people were apprehensive on getting dances even then. When the weekend came around, I was subconsciously not breathing while giving dances.
Well, just in case, because you never know. Obviously, because COVID is spread by like particles, like air particles, right? So you want to be able to protect yourself. And as you said, you're worried about your family. You're worried about contracting the virus and then passing it on to your loved ones. It's a real concern, obviously. So, and the whole vibe you said was pretty depressing and I would say like kind of eerie if the club is pretty quiet too.
Yeah, especially in the dancer room. It's just, people were watching the news. People were laying down on the couches, not going downstairs. Everyone was eating by themselves or washing their hands over and over again.
Right.
All of our hands were flaking and like bleeding from washing our hands and disinfecting it so much.
Oh my gosh, crazy. And then of course,
yeah.
With the announcement by the World Health Organization, they declared it as a pandemic, and then I think shortly after the club closed, I think it was around almost mid-March, which is probably when you were done that full week. And then of course you probably heard, obviously, the number 5 decided to close down its doors, obviously for the sake and the safety of their patrons and obviously the dancers too. How did you feel about that? I mean, you already had a hunch that it was going to close down.
I think it was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. From the beginning, talking to all the employees that work here, the bartenders, the GM, everyone, their number one priority was to protect us and protect the people who came into their club.
Right.
And if that meant taking initiative to be one of the first clubs to close, then that was like, so be it. That was how it was going to work. And it was a scary time. No one knew what was going to happen. And I think they handled it really well as far as closing that early and doing it to protect us.
Yeah. It's doing their due diligence, and also I think it's really admirable as well, just taking that responsibility, because it sounds like they take really good care of their staff there and, of course, their patrons. So that's good that happened.
I agree.
Yeah. And also being one of the first clubs to open in Canada. Are you ready for that perfect summer glow up? Check out Vancouver on Instagram. She is a top-rated spray tanner in Vancouver, using only vegan and cruelty-free top-tier solutions. Her all-natural, house-made, gold-shimmering finishing powder shines perfectly on stage. Slide into Vancouver's DMs for a tan consultation or to book with her, and mention Strip by Sia for 10% off. So, tell us about when you got the news of when the number 5 was going to open. Because I heard rumors a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, there's going to be a club opening. I think the 5 is supposed to be opening. How was that for you?
So I was one of the people that was asked in the very beginning of the thought. Mm-hmm. It all kind of was resting on if we could put up the plexiglass in time and to sanitize the whole club in time. And they were doing renovations at the time. So everything was weighing on that happening. And if we were good to go and WorkSafe BC was okay with everything that happened, then we were going to open. Wow. So in the beginning, we were told, do you want to work this week? We're just going to let you know that when you come here, you're going to have to wear a mask to talk to clients, and they're going to have to wear a mask, and you're going to have to be on stage only. And there's plexiglass, and you're protected. That was the initial thing that we were said.
Right.
A lot of girls didn't like that because a lot of girls need the hustle. Just the sex work part of the work is a huge component for a lot of people. Of course. And I agree, it definitely changes your mindset when you're at work, and it keeps you motivated. So I understand why they said that, but I was like, screw it, let's see what it's like. So I was lucky to be asked, and then I was matched with an amazing lineup of girls who did their best to stay in line with WorkSafe BC and to stay cleanly and protect each other.
Right.
So,
did you want to go into what kind of protocols are being in place? With now, you did mention a couple things that the girls have to wear masks. Obviously, if people have seen on number 5's Instagram, there is large plexiglass. So you guys are like almost in like little like fish tanks, but not really. But obviously, yeah, like I don't know how else to describe it, but they've put those up as well. And you mentioned that there were some renovations going to the club. Did you want to speak on any of that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just do like a walkthrough of the club. When you first walk in to the club, you are essentially, there's a rope stopping you from going in first, and a waitress or a bouncer has to let you in and take you to your seat. The booths have plexiglass in between them, which is actually, I hope they keep it forever, because usually at the 5 you can hear the booth next to you.
Right.
So it's kind of nice because you can't really hear anyone else when you're sitting in your booth. You can only hear the music and your friends. Plexiglass in between all of the booths. There's plexiglass around the stage with enough room to tip, and then there's a gap at the top just so it doesn't get too hot up there.
Right, so you can breathe.
The shower is covered in plexiglass.
Really? Oh my gosh.
So you can see, I mean, I'm pretty short, and when I'm barefoot in the shower, it kind of, my eyes are like the only thing you can see at the top of it, but it's kind of a cool effect when you see the water droplets hit the plexiglass around it. It looks like a big jumbo shower.
I was really gonna say, like, I think that would actually work. Like, that would be pretty sexy. So that's awesome.
The bar has plexiglass all around it, so it's protecting the bartenders from like immediate contact. The bartenders are wearing masks. just to bartend. The servers wear masks, and so do the bodyguards. Or not the bodyguards, the bouncers. What? Okay. They are bodyguards.
The bouncers.
Very large bodyguards.
Oh wow, that's so different. So different.
It's really interesting. Also, the renovations, though, they kept the charm of the Five. They kept all the booths, the lights, the pictures on the walls, but they repainted the ceiling, they redid all the carpeting, they redid the tiling. The bar top is completely redone now. It's like a black marble.
Nice. Oh my god, so classy.
And they got rid of all the black lights, so now it just looks like a lounge almost.
I was gonna say, because like the way you're describing it and walking us through it almost sounds like very lounge-like, almost like higher end or something. It just sounds like a completely different feel. So excited to revisit. Super cool.
They repainted a bunch of stuff, and even just tiny details. They were able to finish it in 2 months, which was really impressive, the amount of stuff that they did. It was the owner and their maintenance guy who did it.
Oh my gosh, just those two?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did it all themselves, and it looks amazing.
Yay! Thank you. I'm so excited to like take another visit. I haven't been there in a while, so that's exciting. Is there anything? And of course, obviously, you said there's no more lap dances, so the upstairs.
Yeah, that's definitely the big thing. The upstairs is closed. They closed the door, so you can't even look inside of it and have a taste of your memories. But it's completely closed off, and it's really hard because that was a huge component of keeping yourself sane when you're at work. Instead of just going on stage, going upstairs, going on stage, going upstairs, you had a break and you could talk to people and be around other people. So definitely a little bit of a shock to get out of that that movement.
Yeah, that's so different. It just almost seems a little bit like robotic, sort of. But I guess we're all going to have to adapt. I mean, that's the way that the Five's doing. I'm not sure what the other clubs are doing right now, but I'm going to be speaking with a couple of other people later this month. So hopefully you can find out to see what other efforts are being done. But that's really interesting. Thank you for that. Obviously, the vibe is different. Can you tell me about, like, in terms of dancing, in terms of tipping, what kind of capacity is there? I would imagine there's not a lot of people. I mean, probably 50%. I would imagine, no standing room or anything like that.
No, everyone has to stay in their seat. I think the only time you can pop up for a second is to tip, or you can get the server to bring money to the stage. But,
wow, interesting.
It's definitely hard.
Yeah.
The tipping is amazing. We're living off tips right now, which isn't the worst situation. People are still excited to go out and experience nightlife and throw cash when they can, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. People are tipping on the floor too if you're sitting with them with a mask on. People are trying to do, I guess, their best to kind of have the same strip club feeling. You're still spending time with the girls and giving them money, but it's just the disconnect of the dances.
I was gonna say that too, because with lap dances being gone and just not really being able to mingle as much as you would in normal pre-COVID times, it's I guess going to be a little bit hard to navigate during this time. Like, how has it been for you?
It hasn't been terrible, but I don't even know how to explain it. It hasn't been awful, but I think there's an aspect of it that really affects your mental health. So in the beginning, I was like, yeah, I'm back on stage, I'm dancing, but then there's stipulation of you can't do very many tricks on stage because you will knock the plexiglass.
Yeah, it's going to be like, how strong is this glass?
It's actually extreme. I gashed it up the first day that it was up. I swung my leg around, do a trick, and I hit it hard, and there was a huge gash across it. And then they just went up and they rubbed it off, and I was like, oh wow, they really invested.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. I'm
That's
proud of myself.
Has it been hard though in terms of money wise without the lap dances? I would imagine you guys would be taking a huge hit on that, or have customers been tipping more or being more generous, as he said, to try to support you guys in their own way? Or
I will honestly say that it is not the same monetarily wise.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
definitely not. You're losing at least 70% of what you would usually make.
Yeah.
The stage tips are better right now. It's
Good.
something that I will say.
Yay.
But you're definitely losing a component. Like if you were, let's say you're number one spot on a Saturday.
Yeah.
You're the first to go home and you're the first to start that day. If you're the first to go home, you have that entire period of 2 hours to go sell dances.
Yeah.
So that's when you're hustling hard. You can make a solid chunk of cash before going home that day.
Right.
Whereas now you're just going on stage, getting off, and going home right away, and you lose an entire chunk of time. And then the girls who are on stage at the time usually make more cash because that's when people are inebriated and partying.
Yeah.
So it's a good spot to have. But yeah, definitely I noticed a little bit of a change as far as money, but it's not drastic. Like I'm not scared.
That's good. I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear too. What about like in terms of masks and stuff? I know, and I've seen that you guys or the dancers have been wearing masks. What about the patrons? Is there like a mask rule? Is that optional? Or what kind of protocol is number 5 doing in order to maintain safety of both the dancers and also safety of their patrons?
So it's not mandatory to wear a mask in the 5, but it is encouraged.
Yeah.
It is mandatory. However, if you want to sit with a dancer face to face, you would have to wear a mask, and so would she.
Oh, good.
So it's a really nice little add-on to keep us safe when we're on the floor, but at the same time, sometimes you forget. Sometimes you're not wearing your mask properly, or people refuse. Some clients will refuse to wear a mask.
And is the number 5 still serving food as well, or is that not happening?
Yeah, so they brought down their menu, I think, a tiny bit, but they are still making food. And I think a big component of why we're open is because we're technically a pub and we can serve food.
Right.
So you can still get your 5 burger.
Yay. That's awesome. Wow, so it's been really different, but it seems like you guys are thriving, so I'm really glad to hear that. Would you say that some of the other dancers are sharing the same sentiment as you as well in terms of like being really happy to be back and being employed again and stuff too? Or a lot of people just maybe still scared to come back because some people are still isolating? Can you speak on that?
I can say that coming back to work was a little bit bittersweet. As my friend Cola said, definitely was bittersweet to come back because you kind of miss being at home, but you also miss the money and being able to be around your friends and being able to do stage shows. So the entire time I was there, I vowed I would never complain again about being at work because I missed it so much. And as soon as I got there, I was like, God, I want to go home.
Totally.
But a lot of girls, I think, are apprehensive first about the money that they're going to make during the week. They don't want to step away from their OnlyFans or camming or doing whatever else they do for that week in case the money's not worth it and they lose out on the money that they could be making.
Right.
A lot of people are scared of getting infected. I noticed a lot of ignorance while I was at the club, but people just being almost selfish.
Really?
Clients specifically, not the girls, absolutely not the girls, but clients being like, oh, well, I can't get sick because I'm not an old person, and then proceeding to breathe in your face whenever they have the opportunity, and you're like, great, this is cool. I feel super safe now.
Yeah, that's not cool. That's super rude.
It was super crappy to experience because working in that kind of environment, you're doing everything you can to keep safe.
Exactly.
And when you have people that are kind of making a joke out of it and being like, haha, you're wearing a mask, you feel like crap and you feel a little scared. So
I wonder if like can the bouncers kick people out in terms of that, or it's just not enough to feel that or to back it up, I guess. Because that can be like a threat to your safety. Yeah, I guess that's a good way of saying it, because then that's almost like threatening your safety, you know what I mean? That's like threatening your health. So But I guess it's really tricky too, because then put the bouncers in a tricky place as well, to be like,
Yeah.
how many strikes will they get, and how much is too much. But another topic for another time. But this is really interesting. I'm so glad that the 5 is open again. I wonder, in your own opinion, like how can you see this progressing? How can you picture the clubs operating, say, months down the line? Hopefully things will ease up and stuff. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah. A few months down the line, I feel like we will slowly start introducing dances again.
Mm-hmm.
They'll likely be masked, or they would bring down the capacity in the tiny room. Probably like stuff like no duo dances, no two girls, just the one, like one-on-ones.
Right.
Ultimately, I think the plexiglass may be there to stay for a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we've noticed that with the plexiglass, it started taking away people's ability to touch the dancers on stage, and girls feel a lot safer on stage with the plexiglass.
Yeah.
And you can kind of avoid the extremely talkative people in your front row.
Yes.
So
we all have those, don't we?
Yeah. So it's
gosh.
kind of a nice little add-on that I think we want to hold on to.
Yeah.
It could be the new norm. I'm not sure. I had people, like older regulars, telling me about how, like, 60 years ago or 50 years ago or 30 years ago, this is how it was. There were no private dances. It was mainly the stage. But people do go to the 5 for their legendary private dances, I think. So
right.
It's a huge component of the club being open. Hopefully it comes back, but I don't think they're in a rush right now.
Yeah, of course. And they'll have to abide by WorkSafe BC and all the health regulations too. So hopefully, slowly but surely, that'll come back, because it's a great component of the club. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I guess with that, we can go into some Q&A, because there are a few questions here from all the people on Instagram and Facebook. So shall we go into that?
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
Okay, so I know you already possibly answered these a little bit, but if you want to answer them in more detail, you're more than welcome to. So first question looks like, how is it dancing with the plexiglass on stage? How strong is it if accidentally hit? Which you already did.
Yeah, I was the first one to hit it too. I was like, the owner was sitting at the bar and he just glared at me. I saw him glare at me and I was like, "Oop, yep, hey."
That was me. Well, it seems like it's pretty sturdy from the way that you described it. So
It's a really high quality plexiglass, and I think that it was put on correctly as far as like the wiring that they used and the size of it that they chose.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was really well thought out, and it's pretty sturdy. It just inhibits your movement a little bit on stage, so you have to kind of adapt your shows. And I think by the end of the week, I started feeling myself doing the same thing over and over again, just because I wanted to be on the safe side rather than like flailing my body around and
totally
kicking stuff.
Yeah, and potentially knocking that thing down. Hopefully that won't happen, but we'll see. What is a typical day in the life, daily or weekly routine for you?
Now with COVID,
Up to you how you want to answer it. Up to you.
I think I usually stay at the 5 in their hotel because I live in White Rock.
Okay, wow.
And it's kind of it's a little bit of an hour drive when there's traffic.
Yep.
So I tend to save my money and stay there, but every day is like a hot shower and then like getting dressed and getting right on stage for my noon show or my 1 o'clock or whatever my spot is for.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's really changed as far as how I go about my daily schedule when I work at the club.
Okay.
But there are little things that were added in. So like wearing a mask to leave or wearing a mask to talk to people, sanitizing my hands every time I get off stage, always having hand sanitizer handy. I always put my cash in a Ziploc bag with isopropyl alcohol to disinfect it.
Yeah.
I posted on my story how disgusting it was when I shook the bag. But
oh no. Is that still in your
really
story?
puts... I'll send it to you.
I want to see.
It puts into, I know, it lets you know how disgusting money is first. And you're kind of thinking of all those years where you didn't wash your money and you would count your money and then touch your face after. What were you putting on your face?
Totally.
And I've definitely started avoiding people breathing near me. That's a big one. And I think overall, I've felt myself become more apprehensive of talking to people and spending that extra time to be face-to-face with people. I'm limiting my face-to-face contact.
Right.
And yeah, just stage shows and food and stage shows and food. That's pretty much what my day would look like regularly. So
sounds like a great life, though. I'm okay with that. I'd be happy with that for sure.
It's a really nice balance.
It is. Yes, definitely. And I guess you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but you're welcome to go more into it if you want. But what is the money like since there are no private dances?
I'm not going to say amounts per se, just because I don't like talking about my money.
Yeah, no.
But I would say that I'm making, for a long shift, I'm making around 50% less.
Wow, yeah.
Because a huge component of that was private dances during the week.
Of course.
It sucks, but it doesn't suck that bad. I honestly, I had kind of a melting point where I was like, I'm not making as much money as usual. And I called my friend who works a civilian job and I told her how much money I was making. And she was like, the hell is wrong with you? She was like, most would be just glad to make that in a week. And like, wow. And I was like, well, you're right. I should be a little less hard on myself.
Puts you in check a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I will say that the difference in money really hurts your mental health when you get off stage making nothing on times where regularly you'd be making $30 on stage or something and you walk off on nothing or your show gets rolled. It's a really hard feeling and it kind of affects your brain, but the job gets in your head and you have to remind yourself that it's not a direct indicator of your worth in any way, and it's definitely not a direct indicator of like your fiscal possibilities in the future.
Of course. Good. And I'm so glad you said that too for our audience. So thank you.
Yeah, I have to remind myself.
Yes. And sometimes we do need those constant reminders too, because sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in the money, right? So
yeah.
Especially when the money's good, but what are we saying here? So is the club still getting decent business?
The first couple days, so the Friday, Saturday, it was really good. And then during the week, it definitely dropped. We dropped out. We were seeing less numbers, less of a head count. It would get a little busy around 9 o'clock at night. And during the day, it'd be pretty sparse. If you think about it, the club is losing like 70% of their income because they're no longer having the same foot traffic. Our private dances aren't happening anymore. Right. And on top of that, we're having less bar sales because, again, less foot
people.
Traffic.
Yeah, less volume. And they actually have like to put a cap on it now too, right? Because they probably will reach capacity and that's all they can, like, there's a maximum.
Legally have,
yeah. Exactly. So, which is shitty, but again, hopefully with time things will be lifted, but at this time we'll just have to be patient.
We would see the lack of money that's coming out of the club. We would see it in ways like, oh, they would bring down our dances or our stage shows for the day. And you just have to be understanding when clubs are making little changes like that, especially right now. Mm-hmm. You have to be understanding. You have to trust that they're doing what's best for all of us.
Exactly.
Because as soon as the club's not making money, you get the possibility of the club closing or the club staying closed for longer or things like that. So you just have to be patient and understanding when you work in any club right now.
Totally. Just having the ability to empathize and just understand like what the owners are going through and stuff. At least you have a place and a venue to work at. So, because a lot of the clubs are not going to be open. So keep that in mind if you're both a patron and also a dancer. So we have both those people in our audience on this podcast. So, And I guess you kind of mentioned this a little bit too. Are customers actually tipping on stage? You said yes. But like, there's supposed to be like a little space or something now by the plexiglass.
I'm really bad with sizes, but I would say it's around like probably like a 5-inch kind of gap in between the stage and the plexiglass.
Okay.
And then the top of it is open. I would say like a foot or so open, so people can throw over the glass. People are making it rain over the glass or like throwing it under the glass. So.
Are they actually? Okay. Cool.
It's kind of really fun to see because now the money can't just like, you don't want someone would throw cash at you and it would kind of like flop back and go onto the ground.
Yep.
It can't do that anymore because of the plexiglass.
Yay. So it actually works out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, okay, here's another one too. So are the guys actually tipping or just whining about no lap dances? Like, have you had customers actually whine about no lap dances?
No, I haven't had someone whine. People are pretty understanding.
Good.
I've had a lot of people ask me for dances, and I'm like, I'm sorry, hon, like, we're not doing that right now. And they'd be like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Or, that's understandable, or I'll come back again, or they'd tip me.
That's awesome.
What they would do. So, people are really understanding right now, and I think there's a lot more empathy.
Yay.
Since COVID, which is surprising, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that is really surprising to hear, but also like in a really good way. I'm so glad that people are being human about this whole thing and just understanding what the club's going through, what you guys are going through, and also just health overall and your safety. So that's really cool and admirable to hear. So yay! Yay for people having manners.
People are being good. It's weird.
I know, right? People have manners and etiquette. Yay! Let's hope it stays. And I guess last question here. You briefly touched on this, but are dancers still expected to mingle with customers despite physical distancing, masks, question marks?
Absolutely not.
Right.
If you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to, you don't have to. We no longer have floor time. We don't have to mingle with people. You can if you want to, but a good percentage of us would going on stage and then going straight upstairs to our dancer room and then going on stage and so on. We weren't taking the time out of our day to talk to people or mingle, and they did not care. They cared about our safety and what we were doing, keep ourselves safe, rather than being like, oh, our club has a reputation up. So.
Right. Yay, number 5.
Nice too. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that is the last question. So, but before I let you go, where can we find you? Feel free to plug anything and all the things.
So my Twitter is Cannelloni Queen.
Cannelloni? Like the food?
Cannelloni Queen, yeah. Like,
oh my gosh.
I'm very Italian and I cook, so I thought Cannelloni Queen was pretty fitting. So at Cannelloni Queen on Twitter. My Instagram is missran.e.
Okay.
And my OnlyFans is I think it's just Randi, like just RANDE OnlyFans / yeah. I don't know. I tried to do Rand.e and it worked for a sec and then it stopped working, so I don't know anymore. Some people are fighting me and I'm impressed. People are seeking me out on OnlyFans. It's weird.
I'll be sure to plug all the links in the show notes down below. But thank you so much, Randi, for joining us on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time every day today to tell us about the 5.
Thank you so much for having me. And I was happy to just share my experiences. I'm doing a little bit of a photo set. I took some photos on a disposable camera during the week, and it kind of shows a first-hand experience and what it was like to work during a pandemic. So
really,
I think it's gonna be cool. Yeah, a little photo set. Cool. I'm excited to share it.
That's awesome. Is that going to be on your Instagram or OnlyFans at some point?
Probably Twitter.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I will post.
Because that's more of my out there platform, but Twitter, and then I'll probably share it in a bunch of different places. But I'm excited to share it and get my photos developed. So.
That's wonderful. Well, thanks again. And thanks everyone for listening to this episode of Stripped by Sia COVID-19 series. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe and review. And it's Stripped by Sia on Instagram, as well as my personal Sia stuff. And We'll hopefully, again, I keep saying this every week, we'll hopefully catch in with you guys next week for another episode of our COVID series next Sunday, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks, Randi.
Thank you.
Bye. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, produced and hosted by Steph Sia, aka Kimchi, music by Ted D, photography by Ian Davern, and graphics by Maria Bellin.